Good evening. Welcome to the Big Down. This your boy Bobby Hill. I'm glad y'all could make it with me tonight. I know it's a little late this Friday night. Just trying to working hard out here, trying to make it that 9 to 5. That grind always that grind is always grinding. You know, I always start out like to give a shout out and love to my lovely wife. Sandra Hill. She's my backbone, as I always say. I reiterate it, let her know that she's the reason why I'm up here doing this. She enables me. Not enable like she tell me what to do, man. She enabled me to unlock that confidence to do that. I think that's the best way I could put it. And today, I mean, it started. It happened. Well, something happened early this week. We found out about it yesterday. When it's very, it was a death, someone that was close, and they ain't saying it was like one of it was a family, it wasn't somebody that was a friend or nothing. It was just a person that let me go back, like from as you know from North Carolina, and from a small town in North Carolina, a little 8,000 people, so it's a little small knit community, so things like you know like grocery stores, and we had Food Line, stuff like Food Line, and had Harris Teeter, Wilsons, and back in the day in the hood we had Barefoot. I mean, but I'm saying is like you had the people that work in the grocery store. See them every day. You didn't have to talk to them. You probably said hey, hey and bye to them. Some people you never really talk to, we just see them. And over time, that's your community. Grocery store. You're gonna go there a lot. Shop or whatever. People shop for groceries, and you're gonna see these people, and they're gonna like subconsciously come like a part of you. Like you're used to seeing them, that person when they come when you go to that place. You'll associate that person with that place. So if you see them somewhere else, like, hey man, this is this person that work here. I know that person. And, so here, we where we stay at, like I said, the main like the main grocery store around here is like HEB. It's all over Texas. Like so, you look it up. It's one of the I think it's Forbes one of the top corporations in the country, and it's strictly based out of Texas. So it's a very good company, and like so, we have a store around here, probably about probably about a mile and a half from here, but we go there, and then plus do a little bit of DoorDash, and whenever I'm doing the shopping orders there, you know I go to that store a lot too because it's close to where I'm at, so I'm there a lot, and I so I was accustomed to seeing like the employees. So there was a manager there. I never knew how old he was. I never talked to him much, but it was a black man. He was about dark complected like me, sort of well built, probably about the height, maybe about 5'9", 5'10", maybe. Built guy wasn't overweight, like he was in shape and stuff. So I never knew who he was, like knew his name. I never got but I used to walk by, say hi and bye. Sometimes you say hi and bye first. Honestly, I ain't gonna say I didn't think he liked me. Thought he had a problem with me because he never spoke to me. I tried to speak to him. He never spoke a lot, but at first I sort of like got I get offended. I was like, damn, he don't want to talk to me. Whatever, whatever. I just didn't think nothing of it. But after a while, he seen me there, a lot more. So we started, I say hi, what up, like brothers, I know we do, dap 'em. I ain't never dap them up or nothing, but like, our a universal greeting, you know. So I always try to, even if I was upset about, not upset, but even if it bothered me that, maybe he didn't acknowledge me or speak to me and stuff like that. I didn't let that like make me feel like any animosity towards them and stuff. But after a while, I seen them around. We started having. I think we might have had a conversation or two, but it was good because I just personally, I looked up like, damn, it was nice to see somebody that looked like me that was in a sort of, authoritative position, not authoritative, authority position in a big corporation. So, I sort of, gave him his props and stuff. It wasn't no disrespect. I always give him his props, So this guy, I think his name was Rashad, and I found out, he was in his 40s, like young 40s, early 40s and stuff. Like earlier this week that he passed away, had a, I found out I think he had I just found out, I don't know, like, I haven't seen any official reports, but somebody that knew, like, what was going on, knew more information than me, said it, I think he said he suffered from a heart attack and he had a stroke, and I asked him how old he was, and he told me he was 40. That's sort of like, and I could see that. I mean, he had a useful. I mean, I posted the pictures on my Facebook page. You can see him and stuff, and you see, man, he was, handsome young man. He was a youthful person. He was very, I seen him when I seen him walk around. Personally, I would think he would be in the military where he walked around. He was on top of everything. He just walked around and looked very serious, and made sure that everything. He was working up front. Anyone for me working with a grocery store, they have the front counter. That's where all the cashiers, the registers, and all that. That's one department. Then they have the grocery department where you have all the shelves stocked with all the groceries, the people's stock and all that. So he was up front, dealing with, make sure everybody, customer service, make sure all that was straight. And he was on it. I give him that. He wasn't lazy. He was on top of everything. If somebody wasn't acting right or somebody wasn't doing their job right, and he would put them straight. I've seen him do that many times, and give him respect. He wasn't the type, he wasn't, he took his job seriously. And I remember asking one of the employees one time, I said, and I told him, I said, yo, man, I said, yo, man, is he an asshole? And I asked him, I said, yo, is he an asshole? Like, nah, man, he's just serious. He's focused and serious about his job like that. And I, had to respect that. Not to give him all respect. Can't disrespect a man doing his job. It's just sad to see that, it's sad to see him pass away like that. My wife cried. So we never had any compliment. I think he might have said hi to her one time, but we never had any, like, real great, like, nothing, no conversation like that. But but when people be a part of your life, just seeing them subconsciously, you get used to seeing this certain people here in certain places, and then when you find out a person that's passed away, man, it just affects you. My wife, she works in a hospital. Before that, she worked at, she still worked at assisted living facilities, with elderly. She worked in this department called memory care, where you had the people with dementia, the people, the older people who losing their mind and stuff. So, there was, and the other ones too, memory care, assisted living, and dealing with that, it's the reality of the job is you deal with death. So, she was able to see, like, she saw, like, death, man, people dying on her, people, come in, and then when you, establish relationships with them people, even if it's just a working relationship, the hours that you're there at work, man, that relationship matters. And when you lose that, man, it sort of takes away a part of you. No matter who it is or how important it is, man. It could be, I don't care. It might be your enemy sometime, man. If a person passed away, man, you sit there for a moment and think about it. So it's just, yeah, death is a part of life, man. But still, even it don't matter if it's family or people you just met, anybody that you interact with, man. When when that person's gone, man, you start thinking. You think about, maybe you start thinking about if you can remember the interaction that you had with the person. Think about what that person might have been going through, might have had a silent struggle, because he never, if he had any kind of, like, condition pre-existing, I mean, I'm pretty sure he had a heart attack and a stroke at 40. There was something going on, maybe, and I don't know. I don't get it, but I'm saying that's whatever battles or whatever he had going on, he did not project it in that store, So I didn't see it. I wasn't there all the time, but the things I seen, that man held his head up high. He walked around there with pride, and he made sure he did his job. And that store that's a big loss for that store. It's not gonna feel right walking that store and he's not there. They have a memorial for him when so to videotape the memorial. They have like for him a little mural there with a bunch pictures and flowers and yeah, it's the thing you see when someone passed away, especially at a job. You write down stuff. I wrote down respectful message, rest in power. You know, rest easy. You know, it's hard to say, man. Sometimes it's hard to have the right words to say. Sometimes just stay simple. Rest in power. Be easy, rest easy, man. Pray for your family. Hope your family. I don't know anything about his family or anything, man. I'm just saying his HEB's family, they hurt. They're in shock. So, everybody trying to get through it. Hope people stay strong. Hope that people can move past it. Because that's like I said, he was a popular guy. I think he been with I think he was with the company for like 20 some years. I think. So yes, he picked. Very popular guy. They posted on social media about him passing. A lot of good people. A lot of people put out a lot of good things about that man. They want people. Nobody. I ain't see no negative things about him. So he impacted people in a positive way, and that's all you can ask for in life. You know, you have money. Money comes and goes. Everything, all this stuff comes and goes, man. It's all about the lasting impact that you can have on people. When a person thinks of you, what they want you to, or as what the great Robert McCall said, whenever in the great trilogy that is the Equalizer, when you look at me, what do you see? And that's all, man. What you or take it one step forward. When someone's gone, when you think of me, what would be your thoughts? Do you want them to think, oh my man, I couldn't trust him. He was sneaky. Really wasn't a stand up guy. Or you want to be that one, be like people hold their head up, like don't matter what was going on. When I saw him, he was real. Wasn't no BS. He wasn't talk. About, he was like a stand up guy. You know. So that's all you can be. That's all you can do, man. That's all you can control what you do in life. You can't control what people think about you. You can't control how people perceive you. You can only control what you project out here in the world. And let people take what with it as they may. You can only do what you can do. Let's be true to yourself. Be honest with yourself. Don't be sitting out there faking being somebody that you're not, man. Be real with yourself. Be real with yourself. Don't be honest. Be honest. Keep it real. You know. Everybody ain't great at everything. You ain't great at everything. There's some things that you're gonna have shortcomings with. Be man enough to say, I ain't. I need some help. You don't have all the answers. You don't have all the solutions. That's what's good having somebody with you to help you, so y'all can come up with solutions together. So like I said, I don't know what this man. I don't know nothing about his family situation. I didn't know him outside of what I seen, the little bit of interaction I seen with him in the grocery store. But I know he had a HEB family, and the reason, like, how you become a successful manager is having a successful crew. You have all the answers, the knowledge in the world, but if you don't got the crew here to help support you, you just a man with the knowledge. You can't perform that knowledge. That's what your crew is for. You have a strong. You teach you be a leader to your crew. Let your work ethic and your knowledge bleed out to your crew. So let your crew reflect your work ethic. That's what you want. You know. So, like I said, so it was a sad loss. I pray, I just, prayer goes out to all his family, his family and his HEB family. It's just sad when somebody passed away, especially a young brother, man. He was young, man. He was young. He had a lot more work to do. But I guess, people, the universe has other plans for you, you know. So it's sad, part of life, man. And just, take all you can do is take lessons out of things in life. You don't it would be sad. Yes, you mourn. We're human beings. We're gonna mourn when we lose stuff. But what you can't do is be soaked and immersed in all of that mourning all the time and let that bring you down. And as the saying is today, let that take away your peace. Don't let that, bring you down. You mourn, you give your respects, you shed your tears, you know, then you pick yourself back up. You wipe your tears away. Soaked in tears and alcohol, whatever, and just not doing that with yourself. That's not honoring that person. You being selfish. You want to honor someone when they go, pick yourself up and you be a better person. You know? So that's why I think about stuff like that, man. I think about, his family, think about, just another how young he was, man. How like 40 years old, man. I'm 51 years old. And I'm thinking, trust me, believe me, I think about it every single day, being 50 years old and how that, you know, I just think about stuff, man. I think about people I've met, even my wife. She lost her mom. She lost her mom in COVID. I think in 2020. She buried her in 2021, and she lost her from COVID. I think she was in her 50s. I think her father passed away in her 50s, in his 50s. Excuse me. You don't even think about like think about famous people. Let's think about famous people. Right? You think about Bernie Mac in his 50s. You know, or that D'Angelo that's passed away in his 50s. Malcolm Jamal Warner. I mean, though that was a tragic accident, still in his 50s. I think Robert Harris was before. It's sad, man. You think about like your NBA like athletes and stuff who have passed away, when they was in their 50s. 50s, I think. Was it Will Chamberlain? Somebody did that. Was it in their 50s? No. I think. No, 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 no. I don't think. But I don't pull things up. I could pull it up on Google, but I don't try to do that. I try to use my brain and try to remember stuff. So sometimes I might be wrong, and if I'm wrong as far as on facts, please forgive me. Correct me if you can. Correct me if you got the answers. Because I try not to. I'm trying not to run to Google because I have a Google right here. It works very well. I'm trying to make sure it works well. Run into there every time I hit that search engine. Doesn't exercise this right here. And that's how you stay sharp, and that's how you stay sharp, man. That's how you try to stay sharp. Use your brain, man. Stop. Try not to be so dependent on phones and everything. Try not to be. But when I'm in, like I said, I'm in my 50s, man. Trying to, I stopped doing them for a while 'cause I went to the gym. When I was on the road, I used to do them all the time. I started back doing my push-ups. People, if I tell you I do 500, I might as well do 500 push-ups. And how I do them. I do 50 push-ups at a time, and I do 10 sets of them. I probably take a minute. It all depends. I'm not like I used to be. I used to be able to, take like 30-second breaks in between them. But yeah, I'm not that person no more. So probably take about a minute, maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes in between, do 50 more. And then, I do 10 sets of them. You know, I try, I do other things. I got dumbbells. I do, what I can. Or try not to go to the gym no more. Try to get stuff at home because I feel like I work out better at home. I don't, gym is okay, but I feel like I do better at home. I can focus more and do all that, not all the distraction and all the people, everybody have to wait for equipment and all. I don't all that. No, I'm good. You know. So yes, I started back with 500. I done did them. I have done them like I did 'em Monday. I did them every day this week, and I mark them on my paper. I got a paper that I mark on. I got all my marks. Each mark is 50. Do four marks and slash it through. That's five, and I do 10 of them. And I do like do 10 sets. I'm trying to Rex, I'm trying not to overdo it, but I mean, you're so used to doing. I've been doing that since I was in college, doing 500 push-ups. Don't ask me what 500 is a number. I just did 50, and then that was good. And then I did 50 more, and then I just kept on doing it. I discovered it by like I feel I can do 50. 50 is a good like set, so I just feel like there was sets 50, 50, 50. You do it, you know, and I started driving, I've done it. I've done it all in college. I did them all the time. And then I started driving trucks. And I tried to do them in some trucks, but the way the trucks are built, I was unable to be able to do it. Like I couldn't, I was too big as far as my body too big. I didn't have enough maneuvering room in there until I got in one truck. I think it was a big, it was a Volvo. It was a big Volvo, and it was an automatic, so it didn't have a gear stick coming out the ground. So the whole floor it had a big floor, so I can do push-ups on it. And I used to do a lot right then. I used to do when at first I used to drive cross country. I used to take a 30-minute break and do 500 push-ups. I used to take randomly just pull over, and I felt like, man, I've been riding all day. I want to do some push-ups. I used to pull over at a rest area for about 15 minutes and real quick knock it out because I was at a point where I could knock them out real fast. So, but the most I've ever done in a day, I've done that 4 times in a day as far as pulled over and did 5 push-ups. That's the most I've ever done in one day. I did that one time. I did 2,000 push-ups in one day. I did that one time, and I have never done that again. I've done 1,500 a couple of times, and I've done 1,000 a few times. Did 500 in the morning and 500 at night. I've done that a few times, but that's it. Most times I do 500, 500. So I'm not a person that's ever going to be like, man, I did 2,000 all the time. No, I did 2,000 one time. I was driving across country. I think I was in. I think I had driven from. I think I started in. I think started in Kansas, and I think I ended up in Wyoming, and that's where I did it. Yeah. So yeah, but that was a different time. I ain't that. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not in a competition, so it would need me to do 2,000 push-ups. But still, I got 500. It makes I feel good afterwards, and that's the thing, man. Trying to keep I said trying to keep myself sharp. Because these 50s, man. I'm telling you, man, these 50s. A lot of people done got up out of here in their 50s, late 50s, early 50s, whatever. It don't matter. I did Brendan Man. I'm trying to think who else might die. Did Patrick Swayze die in his 50s? Think he did. Um, they don't get to it, man. Sometimes I have when I think of sometimes I have things on my mind all the time, but when it comes trying to retrieve it, it just disappears. No, no, we don't know. But I had set up to the reason why I was going to stream like 30 minutes earlier, but there is a good reason why I did not. It made me very happy. I'm talking about loss today, and losing somebody and it's life is crazy, man. Life is mysterious. Life is has a lot of surprises and stuff. So right before, I'm like a minute away from about to, come up here and go live, and my daughter calls me. My youngest daughter, Victoria, calls me, and she tells me that she wants to move back to Texas. And I told her to come on. I didn't hesitate. I said, "Come on, come on, Texas, come on." You know, I want I want my baby girl back here. I wish I have all my kids here. 'Cause I love all my kids equally. But situation is what it is. But if I can get one of my kids here, get my baby girl here. She was here before, and it was a bad experience. She talked about that too. One of the reasons why she was scared to come because of what happened last time. And I told her I gave her a promise. So God is my witness. I said, I love you from the day you were born. I've seen you grow up, and you know how many you got. So I would never put you in that situation ever again in your life. I said, my wife is she know how she feel about you. The interaction, she came to your graduation. She loves you just like you came out of her. That's how she loves you. But she's not trying to replace your mama. She just loves you like your mama. Big difference. So, and I told her that, and I reassured her that she would never. And I told her how I felt about how bad things were, not with me and her, but the situation. Because when she came, you know, before when a few years ago when she was in the ninth grade having problems, so she came to stay with me to get through her school year. And I got her through there, but it just happened she came during a time where my previous marriage was on the rocks. It was terrible, and she ended up being in some crossfires, some things. Nothing like hurting, like nothing physical, nothing like that. But what things she had to experience, man, just with her psyche and stuff, just some of that traumatized her, and she expressed it to me, and I reassured her that she would never have to go through that ever again. Told him to get her a job, get her. She said she didn't want to go to college, like she didn't want to go there. So I ain't, I'm not person. I'm not gonna say and try to like push her, like, yeah, you better go. No, no, no. We talking. I just told her that, I want you to have a, work at a hospital or something. I said, I understand if you don't want to go to school, college 4 years. I understand all that. I understand that, but I want you to get a job or somewhere, get certified for something, get a piece of paper for something. So that means you will, it's job security. When you're certified to do something, that means you can go places and get another job somewhere. 'Cause if you're certified, no matter what it is, this, we'll figure out what your path is when you get here. But I want you to, I want you to, go, like I say, get you in like a hospital. She first thing she said, "Dad, I don't want to be a nurse." The reason why I get on her that because when she was 5 years old, when she was graduating from daycare or whatever, before she went to the kindergarten, she got on the microphone and said, "My name Victoria, and I want to be a nurse." And I always held her up to it because grandma was a nurse. My grandma's a nurse, so my mother's a nurse. And plus my sister's a nurse. My cousin, a few other ones, but there's a lot of if you're nurses in our family. So I told her, I wouldn't pressure her to it, but I always bring it up to her that, and she always laughed. Like, I don't want to do that. No. But she was talking about, I said, you don't got to be a nurse. I said, a lot of things to do around in the healthcare profession. You don't have to be a nurse. You got options. I said, but when you get down here, we're going to explore these options. We're going to get you, get out of Clinton. That's the most important thing. Get out of Clinton, North Carolina. Get on with your life and just, do something with it. Because there is a ceiling in Clinton, and you have reached it. And it's time for you to break that ceiling and move on to a new damn house. Down, deep down in the heart of Texas. For real. She come down here. I have her up here. I have her up here talking. I have her up here with me. Say a word or two. It'll be fun. Like I said, talk to her for a good time tonight, and we're gonna get that get that squared away. I'll let y'all know because that's gonna be dear to my heart. Being a father never it don't matter. It might be your kids might be gone a little bit, but you still their father. You still being a parent. Never, as long as you're alive, you still a parent. It don't matter. Just because you don't get a chance to be there in a certain phase, don't mean that you can't be there in another phase. Me helping her as a young adult, as a young adult woman, be just as enjoyable as her being a toddler, a newborn, a toddler, a preteen, all that. I miss her, some of high school years and being in middle school and stuff. I was on the road driving trucks and all this stuff, but I'm able to help her when she's a young woman, you know, coming into her womanhood. If I could help her get her career and help her get her life straight, that'd be, oh my God. If I can help one of my kids, I feel like I'm doing something. And with that being said, I know it's up and down. Talk about talk about loss. I'm talking about, opposite. Talk about gain, hopeful gain. Lose a neighborhood figure. I'm hoping I'm, gaining a daughter. No, not gaining, daughter coming living with me and letting me, give her this knowledge. So, hopefully things will work out. We'll let you know how it goes. And with that being said, thank y'all for being here with me tonight. We'll do this again Monday. I'm gonna see what I try to catch the sports up this morning. Been watching it a little bit, watch a little preseason, and we'll be watching more. I just don't get into the day to day, art and day to day debate. I don't do all that no more. The first takes and all that. I try not to do all that no more. I still listen to a few podcasts, about it, but I try to, look at it myself, formulate my own opinions. I feel like I'm well knowledge in these sports. I've been watching them for a long time. I'm a student of the game. You know, am I an NFL insider? Hell no, I don't got to be an NFL insider. I was an NFL, not I was the NFL. I was a football player. And I've been a consumer in NFL most of my life. And I pay attention to all the background, all the nuances. I pay attention to what the linemen do. I pay attention to what that left tackle does, the little left guard does, as well as the running back and wide receiver. So, try to watch it all. So when I talk to you, I'm trying to bring my knowledge and, do my perspective. That's all I can do. I don't care what other people say. I don't care what kind of take other people got. I don't give a damn what they got. They got eyes, I got eyes. They got a brain, I got a brain. They got an opinion on formulate my own damn opinion. So, like I said, we'll do this thing Monday. Hope y'all have a great weekend. We'll try to be safe out here. Be safe. Y'all love each other. Today, man, going through what we went through, just reiterates, double down on what I say at the end of here, man. Just kiss your kids, kiss your loved ones. Let them know you love them. Let them know how you feel. Let them know what if you've been holding something back from them. Let them know because you never know, man. One day you here, next day you're not. All it takes is a split second for you not to be here. So, life is precious. Hope y'all take care of yourself and be safe. Enjoy your weekend. Love all of y'all. Kids going back to school, do your homework. Kids going to school, start school on Monday. Be safe out there. Parents be safe. Parents take care of your kids. It's getting all these life lessons, man. Like I said, just love yourself, love your kids, love your loved ones. Hug them, kiss them every you get the chance. Because the way this world is, you never know. It might be over. Y'all have a good weekend. I love all of y'all. See you later.